Hello everyone, I'm Mark van Dijk from What's in a Mind. I made this video because these are very special times, and at the moment that I'm making this video, practically the whole world is being affected by a pandemic. This is the first time in post-World War era, and the effect it is having on society and humanity in all of its aspects is unseen for this era. Special times come with special possibilities to get life on a higher level. Every time humanity is being pushed upon its limits, something very worthwhile can come out of it. When in 1865 the Civil War ended in the United States, it was the end of slavery, but also more rights for African people in America. And it was the beginning of a really United States of America. When in 1945 World War II ended, the European countries had suffered so much they could barely stand up. The losses were horrible, both on material as on human side. The end of the war, with the consequences of the suffering, pushed the countries to think about themselves and their relations with each other. It was the beginning of the European Union. Both events of history have led to more unity, but at very high costs. It all could have been easier if people would have been more conscious about the results of their acts and if they wouldn't have let seduce themselves to such violence. The things I'm going to say in this video are far from the regular or commonly accepted. But if you would take the time to listen to what I have to say, it could be that your vision on life and humanity will never be the same again. It might be difficult, but it certainly will be rewarding. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, because otherwise it would be impossible for the majority of the viewers to understand what I will be talking about. It is also very important for the right perspective. I was born and raised in Belgium, and the people who know me will be able to tell you that I'm a very honest and reliable person. The things that I'm going to say aren't made up, but are actual personal experiences. I am very serious about that. At a very young age, I felt myself very different from other people. I was aware that my consciousness was working in another way and at a higher level than that of the people surrounding me, both in my family as in school. From a very young age on, I was interested in consciousness and the importance of it. I was always observing people and their energy for the possible influence of them on myself. I felt myself as an adult caught in the body of a child. I remember having to tinker one day in kindergarten, something that I found very childish. At that moment, I looked up at the teacher, thinking, "You have absolutely no idea who I really am." That situation of having to tinker something so childish was very humiliating and frustrating. I was born with a higher spiritual awareness than average, and even at the age of 4 or 5, I knew that my parents weren't really my parents, and that bond, that physical bond, they being my parents, was only temporarily for my time being on earth. I knew that after this life, they wouldn't be my parents anymore, but just a kind of brother and sister. I even remembered states of consciousness from before I was born, even from before I was conceived. I remembered being capable of things in the sphere where I came from, where I couldn't succeed in here anymore, because of the density of matter on Earth. And I also started to remember flashes of previous physical earthly lives. So all those things were already present in me. Or was it a present? Anyhow, being born on Earth was a frustration in many ways for me. When I was a little bit older, my father told me something about my birth, through which I got a flashback and by which I remembered that I didn't want to be born at all. I was blue during my birth, and the physician had to hit me to make me start breathing. And from a very young age, I was aware of being caught between two worlds, the spiritual, highly developed world and the physical world of very low awareness. I had to learn to accept that. Also because I was sent to Earth with a mission to help raise consciousness on Earth. I also became aware of the importance of the life of Jesus Christ on Earth, and I started an inner study of his life through touching all of his deeds and sayings at my own inner knowing and wisdom. And I came to the conclusion that there was no other option to escape from Earth than to live life like he has done and preached. That study started already in my childhood, when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Not because my parents taught me so, not at all, but because I got to go to a boarding school of nuns due to the death of my mother. And it was from the spiritual world that I got the instruction to soak up every aspect of his life into my soul, like a dry sponge that got thrown in the ocean of the most advanced knowledge of life. And later on, I started my study of spirituality by meditation and books. My view on life and Earth became constantly broader and deeper. Everything I said before, you have to keep in mind for what I'm going to tell you after, because it is very important. This pandemic is a real challenge for humanity, socially, emotionally, mentally, and financially. Very many people also see it as a challenge to conquer or to get through. Radio and TV stations have taken the challenge to lighten the quarantine and to inform and entertain people. And companies have to challenge the danger of bankruptcy. Governments are taking the challenges to prevent companies from going bankrupt and to get the pandemic under control as quickly as possible. and people at home have taken the challenge against the virus in their own way. And taking the challenge is placing your feet firmly on the ground to brace yourself for what is coming and hold yourself ready to knock it down to be able to triumph over doom. From our point of view, it's a challenge. But throughout history, disaster and doom have always wanted to tell us something else than to see it as a challenge. Time and time again, they want to make us something clear. We see it as a challenge because we want to defend our acquired positions of which we are so proud. Disaster and doom do not want us to defend our positions. They want us to learn a lesson. Because we don't understand life, we see their origin through the colored lenses of our own perception, and that is challenge. We transform their origin to what we think it needs to be. Doom and disaster mean disharmony, and they will always return until we learn what they really want to say. We even could be taking on challenges forever, because they will be coming back as long as we don't learn to respect our origin and original message. Here you see it standing as what we made of it. Challenge. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of magic and show you what they really want to say. Also learn to understand that there are very many secrets of life hidden in our language. And as you know, all good things come by threes. 1, 2, 3. Change. That's what the origin of doom and disaster want to tell us. During time we drove a wedge in their origin and couldn't understand them anymore. We split it right in half and filled it up with our own point of view. Instead of making our suffering shorter, we made it very much longer. And because of the loss of insight, we also lost the possibility to escape from them. We need to change. That's the only thing they want to tell us. And the way humanity needs to change to reach and solidify harmony is very, very extensive. By even only rejecting what I said about myself and my experiences would make it impossible for humanity to reach harmony. In doing so, humanity would again pass by at its own origin. It takes a serious distance to analyze our position on the map of evolution and a lot of insight. Otherwise, it would be the same as looking through a microscope at a specimen and thinking you saw the Earth. Humanity is the result of collecting the building blocks of life on Earth, which have thoughtlessly and without any insight been lumped together, not even with the intention of turning it into a solid house that comfortably accommodates all of its residents in all its rooms. There were not even entitled architects present, only landlords who wanted the largest possible house for themselves. The brilliant architects who presented themselves and could have brought order out of chaos have been crucified on the field next to the ruin. Humanity is a sailing boat without a rudder, drifting around at the seas, going to where the winds of the moment will blow it to. There is no real course, even not a chart or a compass. There are only a few captains aboard, fighting with each other for the control over a loose wheel. In the hold, the passengers, laughing about the one at the wheel and becoming seasick for another countless time. Look around you, and you will see that reality is even far worse than the metaphors that I used to describe the course and track of humanity. I measure it up to the standards that I know from the spiritual world that I'm connected with. And that is one with a very pronounced course, where all of its residents are completely convinced of that course and support it with every aspect of their being. They are the course themselves. Their origin is the destination at which they point their compass, and their inner light is their guide. There is no doom or disaster anymore at that level. All of it because it is their choice. All of it because every single individual at that level has chosen a long time ago for harmony. It are those standards that I want to convey to you. Humanity is running around like a blind man, being shot at in a minefield. Humanity needs to get control of itself and open up its eyes if it ever wants to get away from disaster. It is exactly the same for each and every individual. And those who reside at the level that I was referring to were once persons on earth who decided to open up their eyes and take responsibility. They all made a change instead of taking on a challenge. And the change cannot come without acceptance of elements that were unknown before, that were not accepted before. In essence, we are physically not much more than a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and a little bit of this. Mentally, on the other hand, we are completely different. And one of the biggest changes those people had to accept is that consciousness is the greatest possession you can ever possess, and that it is actually the only one you can really possess. Not a body, nor matter. They are constantly recycled and passed on to the next generation. Even your body is constantly renewing itself. It isn't anymore the same body as when you were born. It is another body. Bodies and matter are the means to gather consciousness here on earth. They are not the goals to aim for. Once, those people started to invest in consciousness, and they are still living off those investments, and became far more richer than they ever started. It's a richness that will only grow and stay forever theirs, equal to the amount they invest in it, time and time again. Instead of teaching children only skills on how to survive on Earth and to make a career, they should be taught for a very large part about who they really are. That would bring peace, rest, joy, and harmony within them. And that would also create a new generation of teachers that would understand their pupils fully and make a real connection with them. It would make them flourish and let them live life to its full potential. It would bring humanity closer to what it really is meant for. I would like to come back to the actual situation and explain what kinds of changes there are needed to bring humanity to a higher level of consciousness and well-being. The impact of this corona crisis is and will be gigantic in every possible way, certainly financially. On Earth, there is a huge imbalance in the payment of taxes. In many countries, hardworking people pay almost half of their income, or even more, on taxes, while their employers make all kinds of constructions in tax paradises to pay peanuts in comparison to their employees. They scoop up billions of taxes that need to be paid by less powerful people. That's not fair, and every government of every country should come to the insight that poor employees do not have to carry the richness of their bosses. There should come justice in taxes for everyone all over the world, without any exception. Governments should question themselves, all of them. There should come worldwide commissions to analyze which countries are the most evolved in certain domains, so that the others who are not yet at the same level can learn to adapt themselves to reach the same level in that domain. Countries should analyze themselves honestly in every aspect of their society. All of the resources on Earth should be applied to bring life and humanity to a higher level. All natural resources should be used for the well-being of the whole society instead of for the richness of a few entrepreneurs. Look at Norway, where the whole society is having benefit of the resources and people have a very high standard of living. Every use of resources for violence or war is a crime. Whether it is oil, metal, explosives, etc., the intention to use them to rule over or suppress another or the own population is a crime. Costa Rica is a country without an army, where peace is the main goal of society. Very much can be learned from them. And governments should be in service of their population, everywhere in the world. Not the other way around like in many dictatorships. And taxes should be used to serve civilians and to create general well-being, not for prestigious projects of governments which are meant to show off. And that's also why they should protect their civilians against injustice and need to take care of fair tax rates all over the world. If you want justice, there is no place for tax paradises. If armies would be abolished, billions of dollars, euros, rubles, yens, or whatever currency it might be, could flow back to humanity. And soldiers could be transformed to civil guards that support humanity in difficult situations like natural disasters. If weapons were no longer bought by countries, the employees of the weapon industry could be transformed to highly specialized engineers to support technological progress for the well-being of humanity, instead of for the destruction of it. Getting rich by supporting, or just the support of the destruction of humanity, is a crime. Every act of violence or war is a crime. And the way politics are organized should be completely transformed to be able to carry out the sorely needed changes to get humanity to a higher level. For a good citizen, the games played on the political stages these days, whether at local or world level, are very often sickening. It is insane that about every lunatic with a little bit of persistence and persuasiveness can become a leader over millions of people and have power over mass-destroying weapons. There are more than examples enough, and it is not just something of the past. We are still in the middle of it. A lot of nations are a constant threat for world peace or for the peace of the neighboring countries, or even for the peace of their own population. Politics is in many times based on favoritism and self-protection, and on the preservation of power and income, not at all on competence. Politics should become exclusively a role of service for humanity, not a way to make a career or to feed your hunger for power. Politics should only be practiced by people who have the capacities for it, intellectually and even more emotionally. They even should have a high spiritual quotient. Someone with a restricted EQ is not suited to have the power or leadership to help humanity to a higher level. To test yourself whether you are suited to practice politics, you should do the next test. Imagine that you are already practicing politics, and there is a certain vacancy at a higher level than the one you're actually occupying. You are with several candidates for that position, also some from other parties. And deep down inside, you know that one of the other candidates is far more competent for that function than you are, even when it is someone from another party. If you know that deep inside, and you are still willing to get that function, you are not suited for politics. Because then politics, for you, has nothing to do anymore with the well-being of your community, country, or humanity. Then politics is all about your ego, the gathering of power and prestige. At that moment, you're blocking the healthy evolution of humanity at that level, and you are creating disharmony. Not willing to do this test makes you completely incompetent for politics. Every country is still having a multiple party system. This is the best proof that humanity is absolutely not aware about what it really is. If it would be, there wouldn't be place anymore for multiple parties. There wouldn't be even one anymore. Because everyone would be aware of the fact that we all have the same goal. And that wouldn't be something that is written down in some dusty manifesto of a party. That would be alive in the consciousness and hearts of every single individual. Making a change will mean that one has to let go of traditions. Holding on to traditions is the best way to block progress if that tradition isn't meant to support growth, insight, and the evolution of humanity. First of all, there should be created a unified central commission for the regulation of a just leadership for the whole of humanity that has no other goal than to lift humanity as a whole to a higher level of consciousness, as well as every individual. This by combining the best insights of every nation. By this way, a stable society can be created all over the world where not a single individual feels himself discriminated or treated unjust. And the power for this lies with the individual, but I will return to that later. If richness and property would be evenly spread, every single individual would get more time for the development of him or herself. And with such a stable society as a base, all efforts could be applied for the education of children and adults about their true being. The peace and harmony this would create in each individual would be something never seen on this planet. And technology should be there to enlighten every individual's life and also society, and to get more spare time for self-development. But technology should not become the goal, because by doing so, one would pass by human's nature. In such a society, costs of governments and public institutions would shrink exponentially. Courts and jails would start to vanish. Because of an enlarged sensitiveness, people would become far more clairvoyant and clairsensing, through which they could feel mischief coming at them and avoid it in time. Even animals are very often far more sensitive for such things than us humans. And people would start to understand that they have control over their own health because of the way that they keep themselves in line with harmony and their inner peace. They even would be able to cure themselves and others by the way that they control and manipulate their own mind and connect themselves with their origin and love. Even healthcare would eventually become something of the past. This is not a fantasy, but a possible reality. It is the reality at the level of the afterlife that I'm connected with. None of the previous institutes is still present over there. That has different reasons, which I'm not going to explain all of now, but the main reason is that it was a choice, their choice, the choice for a complete change. All of what I said is not something what is too good to be true, but it comes with a downside. This will never be a future that will be given to you, unless earned. And the responsibility lies with you. And it comes at the cost of ego. And that's why I said that it isn't a challenge, but a change, a radical change for those who haven't started it yet. To come in harmony with oneself, its surroundings, and to come to a harmonized society, one cannot skip the responsibility of the self, yourself. One will have to analyze him or herself, not just a little bit until it hurts, but all the way like this, to the bone. You will have to become aware of every single thought and deed and its consequences for every person from the past as well as for this moment and for the future. And by doing so, you should take the decision not to think or act anymore in a way that is harmful for anyone else. All of your thoughts and acts should be coming from the intention to support your own harmony and that of humanity. All of them fed by love. Strive for complete innocence in your life, into every possible way. Take on the quest to find out who you really are. Every single one of you is a God in a nutshell. Break that shell and create roots that support the growth of your core. You should become much more aware of every single choice in your life. The biggest part of humanity lives in a democracy, and that is something you need to become much more aware of. Your vote is giving power to the ones who lead you and also define your future. Become aware of that, and don't give power anymore to the ones who destroy harmony or unity. Make them clear what direction there needs to be followed, and vote for those who are willing to follow you in that opinion. And if you feel politics as a calling, then go for it, but do it in complete innocence, and only to support humanity, for nothing else. Be aware that no fool can have power unless you give it to him. Not a single leader in whatever country is having power unless you give it to him. Not a single war can be started by a leader unless you help him to start it. A soldier or not, if you become aware of what I am saying and start feeling it is truth, then refuse to fight, start a war, or use violence, in deeds and in the mind. Maybe you cannot prevent others from doing so, but at least you will prevent yourself from committing sin. No war can be fought anymore if every single soldier refuses to do so. It is better to be shot than to kill. You have the power over peace and disharmony yourself. Learn to listen to your conscience, because that will guide you to your innocence and to the light. If every single one does so, you will come to peace for the whole of humanity. There's something else I would like to say. It is something that will be hard to accept by many, or rejected by even more. Evolution is not a straight line. It is a circle that is turning and turning around its center, time after time, that only shifts forwards on its path, very, very slowly. Sometimes it is even thrown back on its path, many thousands of years. And these days, humanity is measuring itself on the scale of evolution by the technological progress that it has made. I've stated already that technology should not be the goal, because then you pass over who you really are as a human. Technological development should go hand in hand with the spiritual capabilities of humanity to deal with them. In this era, the technological achievements are far beyond our spiritual capabilities to deal with them. Very far beyond. Just look around you in the present and the very close past. If they would have evolved at the same pace as they should have done, not an act of violence or war would have been part of our modern history, our present, nor our future. Our conscience would have built in safety, even before considering implementing a new technology. And now comes the hard part. The Egyptian civilization in its golden era, thousands of years ago, was spiritually further developed than our modern high-tech society. Women had more rights, even then, than they had here 50 years ago. In some countries, women have far less rights now than thousands of years ago in Egypt. Do you understand that evolution is thrown back sometimes by thousands of years? And that civilization knew far more about certain aspects of life than we do today. The knowledge about reincarnation was even then commonly accepted among the high priests, just as it still is in the East. And spiritual insights from the afterlife, obtained by high priests, got implemented by the pharaohs in daily life. And they strived for the same goal and formed a unity. Our Western society has rejected all those insights, and that is one of the causes why we got thrown back so far in our spiritual development. I love science, because in science you can find the incredible beauty of the perfection of the creation of life. But the ego of science has rejected so much of the past, simply because it couldn't understand it with its analytical mind, and because of its lack of feeling for truth with a capital. If there's one aspect of society that needed to reinvent itself time and time again over the past centuries, then it was science. Although science is still just learning to crawl, it is acting many times like it knows everything, and that there can't be anything more than its achievements of today. Science will always be running behind on reality. Science is not the inventor of life. Life is the inventor of science. Everything that can ever be known is already present. There is nothing new to come. There is only to discover. I would like to advise more humbleness to science. We need scientists, but of the kind that want to open up themselves for the higher knowing within themselves, and who are striving for real connection with life itself, for a real connection with its inventor. We don't need ego trippers. They are the ones that would pass by on their conscience in every aspect and split the right pace between technology and spirituality. And for all those people who like to shout out YOLO and live life like it's their first and their last time, I have something to say. You are locked up in a system of reincarnation. Even the Egyptians knew that already. And out of that system, you can only escape if you start to realize that life is never ending and can only be lived in one way. And that is by showing the deepest respect for every living creature, and by taking care that every thought and act is coming from love. Every. Only then you will start to root and grow towards real prosperity. Otherwise, you will decay and be the nutrients, time and time again, for the tree you're lying under, until you fall out of that tree like a nut again. And coming down will hurt you, time and time again. Life is also like communicating vessels. What you try to empty from one will need to be compensated by the other. And what I want to say with that is that the mess you make in this life, you will have to clean up in the next one, or one of the next, until every disharmony created has been bent again to harmony and karma has dissolved, until the vessels of negative and positive have leveled out. And that's also why I said that you need to strive for complete innocence. I'm living in Belgium, as I said before. Through the years, Belgium has become the center of Europe. Brussels is the capital of Belgium, and it is also the capital of Europe. It even is the center of the world for some other aspects of society, like NATO. But even long before the American continent was talked about, Belgium was about the center of the world for art. We have had here masters in art that were never seen before and never came afterwards. And there is one that I really would like to pick out. One that has been in media all over recently and still is, also because it is his year. It is Jan van Eyck. He was one of a kind of painters that were not just religious inspired, but directly spiritual. He was under supervision of the other side, of the afterlife. And you can take that literally, under a supervision. I love language so much. It is now with his most famous work of art that he, after all those years, struck media, experts, and our consciousness so hard. It is his Ghent altarpiece, or the adoration of the mystic lamp, as I call it in English. In Dutch we call it het Lam Gods, or translated Lamp of God. The past years there has been a restoration of the Lamp of God. And that restoration revealed everything I said before. That restoration revealed the original work of art, and it was completely different from what people always have known about it. During history, the Lamp of God got several restorations, but what happened was that those restorers didn't understand the painting and covered it up like they thought it should have been. It was a terrible mistake. The message that the other side had put into it was no longer visible for humanity, and no one was able anymore to pass that message by this painting. Even today, experts all over the world couldn't understand the new restoration, so the original work of art, and screamed blue murder. They even cast a doubt on the fact whether Van Eyck knew how to paint certain things. But his brilliancy is far beyond doubt. The Lamp of God isn't a work of art that has been painted in just a few years. It is the result of hundreds of years refining oneself in painting techniques and especially in commitment, in multiple successive lives to be able to make such a work of art at that level with that kind of inspiration. It was a plan that was meant to speak directly to people's heart and wake you up for the essence of your being here. All those efforts of hundreds of years from Van Eyck and his leaders came together in the creation of that work of art at that given moment in history. You cannot deny the scene. The starting disclosure of this final restoration is that the lamp has a human face, not the one of a sheep. And that detail is what makes all the difference. What that detail is saying is what I am saying throughout this video. You will have to let flow the human blood of your ego until you reach again the innocence of a lamp before you will be able to enter heaven. At that moment, the angels will be praising you, just like in the painting. And people from all walks of life are witnessing it from a distance, with the utmost respect. It is 2000 years ago that Jesus Christ came to tell us that already. If humanity would have listened then, we now would have been living in the world that I described we can live in. And for those who made that choice already, that world is already their reality. Here on Earth, humanity is still so far removed from that reality. It even doesn't have a plan where to head for. It even doesn't have control to head for something at all. Humanity is being torn apart by all kinds of egos, big and small, as nations or individuals who are trying to get the most out of life for themselves, without the slightest compassion for someone else. They only live just once, you know. Humanity and individuals will have to let go everything what isn't needed. And it isn't only not needed, it even blocks their progress to a higher level, to more harmony. One last time, I'll take my red pen. Also this time, all the good things come by threes. 1, 2, 3. It will have to come to unity. Every individual and humanity as a whole will have to strive for complete innocence in any conceivable way if it will ever want to experience this possible reality that I've been talking about all the time, and if it wants to get rid of all the mayhem, mischief and misery. The level of afterlife through which I'm inspired lives in that unity, from the very first up to the very last person. And the higher you get in awareness, the stronger unity and love become. It is time that mankind takes its responsibility. It is time to head for our true destination. I haven't made this video in function of the restoration of the lamp of God. It is just a nice confluence of events, if you know what I mean, that this revelation happened in this period. There's also something else I would like to say. There is so incredible much work to do to spread consciousness all over the world, and so many other things need to be said and taught. I was only able to make this video due to this corona crisis, otherwise I wouldn't have had the time. And when this crisis is over, I will need to go working again 6 out of 7 to get all my bills paid. It will become practically impossible to make such video again or to give lectures. I won't even have the time to write one. Therefore, I would like to ask you something. If you feel that I told truth in everything that I said and that it deserves to be spread far more and more thorough, please feel free to make a donation. Whether it is big or small, that doesn't matter. If enough people would do so, it would make it eventually possible for me to apply myself full-time to the spreading of consciousness. It is something that I'm striving for all my life. And you can find the details on how to make a donation in the description of this video. If you are going to do so, please don't forget to mention that it is a donation. I really like to serve humanity by spreading consciousness. Something what is so sorely needed if humanity ever wants to come to a change. I, and very many others with me, would be very grateful for every donation. Together, we can make the world better. Don't forget to subscribe for my channel and to hit the bell icon if you want to see more videos like this. And share as much as you like. It all helps in spreading awareness and in making content. I wish you all the best in life, all the needed insight and the awareness of unconditional love. Take real care of yourself and the ones surrounding you. See you later.